Hello everyone, and welcome to your second Apple debugging tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be talking about breakpoints. And a breakpoint is really just a way of pausing the execution of your program. And this allows you to inspect the values of the current state of your program, but it also allows you to change values if you want to test something out. So we'll get into all that, but let's just talk about what you see in front of you right now. This is just a brand new Mac command line tool using Swift, and I've gone ahead and created a person class using the custom string convertible that we talked about in the first tutorial. And we have a name, an age, an initializer, and description, and I initialize 3 people. I put them in an array and print them out. And I'm just going to go ahead and run that just so you have an idea of what that looks like. All right, so nothing too fancy. Now let's say I want to pause the execution of my program, and I want to pause it right before I create this array. So if I want to pause it right before I create this array, I actually want to put the breakpoint line on that line. So this will break the program right before I go to do anything in this line. All right, so let's go ahead and run. And you can see here that we stop execution, and that's indicated by this nice green line here that says breakpoint 1.1, which is the breakpoint number that we have. If you want to see all your breakpoints, there's actually a different tab up here. This will show you the breakpoint navigator, and here is the breakpoint that we've created on line 29 in main. Let's go back though to the debug navigator. And here is basically the current state of your program. And you can actually look at this tab when your application is running, and it'll give you things like CPU, memory, and you can click on any one of these things and it'll give you more details. The thing that we're generally interested in when we're debugging is actually the stack trace back here. So the stack trace is basically what gets called into to get to the point that you're at. So let me actually create a different one just for the sake of argument. I'm going to create a breakpoint in our person initializer right here on self.name. And I'm going to run this program again. So I stopped it and running again. And here you can see that we're actually in our initializer. And on the left side, you can see how this basically the call stack works. So we are in main, and in main, we are then calling into person. And here is the person init call that we're sitting in right now. So that's kind of the general idea. We'll have more complex examples of this, but I just want you to understand that this is the call stack. The call you're in right now is the topmost, and the calls that were made to get you there are, from the bottom to the top. All right, so what can we do with this? Well, I'm going to remove this breakpoint, so I'm just going to pull it out. So here's breakpoint, just grabbing it, and it will just remove it once you drag it away. I'm going to continue program execution, and I'm going to hit back to where we started here with this breakpoint. Some other things to note: on the bottom, we have this view that will show us the current state of the program. So we have these different person values. We haven't actually created this people array yet, but we're about to on this line. And so, yeah, that's basically just the current state, and you can kind of look at different values in there as you want. There's a bunch of different options if you right-click it, but I'm not really going to go into any of that today. On the right side, we have the debugger window. So this is actually LLDB. We are stopped in the debugger, and we could issue debugger commands if we wanted, and we'll get to that in just a second. The last thing that I just want to show about Xcode itself is that up here in the debug menu, there are a bunch of different options and command line or keyboard shortcuts rather to jump around in execution. So all those commands that you see up here are mostly listed down here. So we can, if we want to continue the program execution, we can hit this button. If we want to just step over, this will just allow us to jump to the next line essentially. That will jump us to this print statement. And then there is basically step in and step out, which will allow you to dive into a call if you're in, say, something that's going to be calling a method, or you can jump out if you're already in a method, but you want to jump out to the thing that was calling you. Again, not going to really dive into too much of that today, but I promise future tutorials will. All right, so let's first look at what we have here. So if I want to just step, I could step to the next line. If I continue, I'll just finish off the program execution. All right, what can we do with the breakpoints? Well, we can actually double click on any one of these breakpoints, and we can edit a lot of things about these breakpoints. Now, the first thing here is a condition, and this will allow us to set up a situation where we say we only want this breakpoint to execute if this particular thing happens. We usually call this like a conditional breakpoint. Basically, you can just say, I only want this to happen if these certain conditions occur, and we'll talk about that. The ignore option allows you to ignore when you hit this breakpoint up to a number of times. The important thing is generally this add action option. And there's a bunch of different actions we can do. You can run your own Apple script when you hit this breakpoint. You can do a debugger command. You can log a message. So if you just want to print something out, you can do a shell command, which is like if you wanted to do cd or ls or something like that in terminal, you can run any type of shell command. Or you can even run a sound. So you could just get it to do a standard system sound, like any of the standard ones that come with Mac OS. All right, so yeah, that's that. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do with printing things out. So let's go to log message just for a simple example here. And I'm just going to say people. And I could even put in an expression for this. So you can see here, you can use this little expression syntax to say, basically you do two @ signs, and then you do person1 dot name. And that will be our new breakpoint. So when we hit this breakpoint, we're actually going to print out people and then the variable name of person1.name. The last thing here is we can use this option to automatically continue after we hit the breakpoint. So if we don't want to always stop and have the entire thing stop at this breakpoint, and we rather just have the breakpoint execute whatever action it's going to do and then continue, we could actually set this up to just automatically continue when it hits this breakpoint. So let's try it out. We're going to run the program. And as you can see, we get people and Lucas, which is the name of person 1, and then whatever other standard printout we get. Note you can also change the output of this. So if you only want to see the debugger commands, you can change it to debugger output. Or we can have only target output, which is what the program actually prints itself. Or you can have obviously this mix of all the output. All right, so that's generally what we have in Xcode to play around with, just high-level overview of the list of things. Now, I want to dive into a little bit of some of the commands that you can do when you have a breakpoint. So I'm going to actually just remove this breakpoint and create a new one in its same place. And I'm going to run the program again. So here we have our little LLDB command prompt ready for us. And this allows us to use LLDB commands to actually print out things. And we'll have more details on some of them, but for this, I just want to show you some basic ones that we can use. Now, the most common one that people use is probably PO. It allows you just to print out a description of an object, essentially. So if I want to just do PO person1, for example, we would PO person1, and that would print that out. If I wanted to get specifics of something, I could even use, person1.name, and it's really just whatever Swift code you want to do to evaluate an expression. So basically, we PO whatever is on the right side here. So we're going to print out person1's name, and it works as you might expect. Now, what we want to do here is we want to also change a value. And to change a value, generally you want to use expression. Now, we are actually technically using expression already. If I actually type help PO, you'll see that it tells us right at the bottom here, PO is an abbreviation for expression -o -- and then your expression. So what I'm going to do here is actually use this expression command, and this allows you to both obviously print things out like we just did, or you can change values. So what I'm going to do is just say E, and I could type the whole thing out. I could say expression, but E is just a shorthand, and it saves you some typing characters. I'm going to say E person1 dot name, and I'm just going to change it to salty. All right. So now what this means is that I've actually changed the state of person1. So person1's name is no longer Lucas, it is salty. And if I continue the execution of this, I could hit the continue program execution up here. I can also type C down in the debugger, which is just the command to continue. And as you can see, the printout that we get from print people now says salty 25, and then all the other people that were already there. Great. So what else can we do? Well, let's talk about that conditional breakpoint that I brought up a little earlier. So let's say I have a condition where I'm looping through all the people, and I want to print each one of their names. So I'm just going to print out P. And for this, I'm actually just going to comment out our print people here for now. And I want to make a new breakpoint on this print condition right here. And I'm going to, what I'm going to want to do is basically evaluate for every person that I have whether I want to change something. And this is what we're going to do with a conditional breakpoint. So the condition that I'm going to want to change something. So let's actually talk about the thing that we're going to change before I give you the condition for it. So let's say that what I want to do is for every person that comes through here, I want to change their name to their name plus the Y's. So we're going to make not log message, but we're going to do a debugger command. And a debugger command, right, is the things that we were just experimenting with down here. So I'm going to do E p.name, and I'm going to tack on the Y's to their existing name like this. So this will allow me to say whatever their name is plus the Y's. And I'm going to automatically continue evaluation so that I don't actually have to pause here. So let's go ahead and run this just to show you what the output would be. So you can see that basically I'm taking every name and just tacking on the Y's to it. Now, what if I only wanted people that were wiser than me? And I define people that are wiser to me generally to be people that are older than me. So I could say, well, my age is 25, so the condition I'm going to have for this is for anything, so for any person whose age is greater than 25. And what this means is that the breakpoint's only going to execute if this condition is true. So I can run this again, and we can see that my name doesn't change, but everybody else who is older than me will become their name plus the Y's. So that's the idea of a conditional breakpoint. You can basically just set up whatever condition you have of your running code, and it will allow you to, sort of conditionally evaluate a breakpoint. All right, the very last thing I wanted to show you is just kind of a fun thing in Xcode, probably something you likely won't use, but I think it's kind of interesting just to know that it's there. So if we wanted to do this thing where we can so I'm just making a while condition. I'm going to increment my I value here. And I'm just going to print the value of this every time it goes through. Let me just get rid of this guy for a second. And I'm just going to run through what we have here. So obviously, right, a variable starts with a value of 0. It goes into the loop, and we increment it by 1, and then we're printing that out until we've hit 4. So the output is 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now, what I can do is actually put a breakpoint on this print statement. And again, that means that I won't actually execute whatever line is here. So I've just done this increment. And if we see the state of I in our program, we can see that it's 1. Now, Xcode actually allows for this kind of funky thing where you can change the instruction pointer. So this little multi-line thing, it's really meant to be grabbed. And you can actually move the instruction pointer. Now, this is extremely dangerous, and for almost no cases you really want to do this. But cases that it can be useful is if you're trying to test a condition or something like that, but you just want to change some kind of value to make sure that you could get into it. So maybe you hit a thing and the condition was wrong, and instead of running the whole program again trying to get you back into that state, you could actually move the instruction pointer back just briefly. Now again, the warning is quite accurate here, and almost in no cases do you want to do this unless you're absolutely sure that it won't break things. But I just thought it was kind of a fun thing that Xcode has that you might want to know about. So if I move it back up to here, this means that I'm going to actually increment I once again. So I could continue again, hit the breakpoint. I can move it again if I want, and Xcode will be mad at me again for doing that. But now I could, let's just continue the program. So I'll get rid of my breakpoint, continue it through, and we incremented I to 3, and then it goes to 4, right? But we never printed out 1 and 2 because we always stopped by the print statement, went back up, and kept incrementing I. So just a last little fun thing to demonstrate some of the capabilities Xcode has with creating breakpoints. We'll be talking more about breakpoints in later tutorials. There's tons more to know about LLDB as well. But I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you did find it useful, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the tutorial next week. See you then.